All Independent School District 721 to order. All rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Janelle, please note that all 7 board members are present. Ladies and gentlemen, I have 12 open forum requests. And the policy is that all open forum requesters can speak for 5 minutes. I'm going to ask Greg Tukalski to go first, and I will call everybody after that. If you have more information to add to that, I'm going to ask you to come forward. If your statement or your statements have already been said, I would just ask that you come forward and make that statement too. And my only reason for doing that is if Greg is going to speak for 5 minutes and say exactly what everyone else is, I want to be respectful of your time and all of the board's time. So that's all I'm asking. Okay? So, Greg?
Want me, Tammy?
Right, front and center.
Okay. I have to let you know, yesterday I did speak with a board member and asked if there was a time limit, in which they told me generally there's not. We allow speakers to go up to 8-10 minutes.
Okay.
And so I'm just letting you know that that's what was relayed to me.
Okay.
As you know, my name is Greg Tukalski, and I've proudly taught at New Prague High School for 23 years. I take great pride in having 4 children who've graduated or currently attend New Prague area schools. This year, a host of changes were introduced at the high school. Among them are one-to-one initiative with Chromebooks and teacher collaboration. Unfortunately, among those changes is the most controversial change I've faced in 23 years of teaching. It goes against what I've been taught as a child, a student, an athlete, a coach, and a teacher. It's our district's cheating policy. This past spring, a committee was formed to discuss our cheating policy and came back with a proposal that allowed a student to retake a test after cheating with no academic consequence. In other words, if a student's caught cheating, we simply give them a new test, and if they score 100%, we give them 100%. I came to discover that 4 of the 6 teachers on this committee were non-tenured. I've been there. As a non-teacher, it's very difficult to voice your sentiment for job security. The feeling I got after speaking with several committee members was that the committee was not put together to give serious thought to policy, rather provide a rubber stamp to a policy that administration wanted to implement. When teachers became aware of the policy change, a group of 24 tenured teachers signed a petition expressing disappointment and disagreement and presented it to Mr. Seifert. By the way, both tenured teachers who were part of that committee signed the agreement because they didn't agree with the outcome of the committee. The day after we presented the petition, I was told by an administrator that the proposed change would be dropped and most likely no work would be done over the summer. I took comfort in his suggestion that the consequence for cheating would remain as no credit for work. This fall, on the second day of workshop, I noticed the policy had been discussed and modified over the summer. According to the modified policy, students could now receive up to 70% after cheating incident. A meeting was called among other department heads to resolve the issue after I pushed it. Mr. Seifert said he was prepared to change the policy, but would not go so far as giving a student who cheated a 0. He said the lowest he would go is 50%. A vote of department heads was taken, and the vote was as follows. 0 voted for allowing students to get 70%. 7 allowed students to get up to 50%. Other departments refrained from voting or abstained because there was no 0 option. Other departments equals 7. So we had 7 departments who favored 50, 7 who favored 0, but had to abstain because 0 was not an option. This discussion was on the last day of workshop, the last hour of the day. The next time we come into school is the first day with students. I attended the board work session and heard the concern that if we give a student who cheats a 0, that student has no hope of ever passing the class. Simply not the truth. While our grading system has changed significantly with a heavier emphasis on tests, many teachers in my and other departments already had a heavy emphasis on tests. In addition to IEPs, 504s, we offer students hope with RTI, problem-solving teams, and intervention. Students have more hope this year than they've ever had because in addition to these programs, many of us offer retakes. Why would a student need to cheat and retake a test for 50% when they can do their best through honest means and retake the test? If a student on a test, or if a student cheats on a test and receives 0, they are still able to pass a class. In my class, each test represents about 10% of the grade. I heard giving a student 0 for cheating is a death penalty. It's not a death penalty. It makes getting an A or B more difficult, but it's not a death penalty. One of the mantras going around education is that we can't tie a behavior to a grade. Because cheating is a behavior, we can't allow it to affect the grade. I disagree with the idea that you cannot tie a behavior to a grade. First, studying is a behavior. I hope students in my class find a correlation between that behavior and their grade. Second, we already tie behavior to grade and the consequences attached to unexcused absences. In the New Prague High School handbook, it says, each unexcused absence will result in loss of participation points which would affect the student grade. At the time of a 5th unexcused absence, an F or no grade in the class will be given. Examples of unexcused absence would include oversleeping, missing the bus, skipping class, leaving the building without office permission. We do tie behavior to the grade if the behavior includes oversleeping, missing the bus, skipping class, or leaving the building without permission. I implore our district to treat cheating the same way. I want to remind you that many of us offer retakes. There's no need for a student to cheat. The argument has been made that they are just 14 or 15 years old, they don't know any better. First, our middle school believes that 11 to 14-year-olds should know better. Policy for the middle school has as a possible consequence for cheating, A, receive a 0, B, possible suspension. If a student reaches New Prague High School and doesn't understand cheating results in no credit for a grade, we have failed that student as a district. Second, the 9 comparative districts that we use as a gauge for our academic achievement because they have similar demographics, racial composition, free and reduced lunch, etc., believe 14 to 18-year-olds should know better. They've remained on the moral high ground in regards to honesty. 8 of the 9 comparative districts have a strong consequence for cheating on first offense. Chisago Lakes, Monticello, North Branch, Northfield, Sartell, St. Michael Artville, Sauk Rapids, and Waconia state that the student will receive a 0 for the test or assignment. 4 of these schools explicitly state that a student will lose credit for the course on the second offense. The other school among our 9 comparative was Big Lake, and I was unable to find their district policy, although they did expect students to be truthful. Other premier districts such as Edina, Eastview, Eden Prairie, and Wayzata either require a 0 or allow teacher discretion to give a student after a cheating incident. I understand one of our goals at the high school is to reduce the number of Fs given to students. That goal is a good servant, but a bad master. I support that goal, but believe a premier district would reach the goal through methods of intervention, problem-solving teams, retakes, traditional conferences at all levels, not by allowing a student to recoup 50% of their losses after cheating. I want to remind you that many of us offer retakes for students. There is no need to cheat. I haven't heard any data presented that would compel me to allow students to receive 50% after cheating, and I will not acquiesce. I would like our policy to read no credit for any tests that the student cheats on. My proposal would be to reinforce the value of honesty with students. In my class, I celebrate honesty and share the significance of it in life. I use the pledge used by my alma mater, St. Olaf College, which reads, I pledge my honor, I have neither given nor received assistance, and have witnessed no dishonest work. With the pledge written on the whiteboard, students sign their name on the whiteboard following each exam. This, of course, is optional. I have been doing this for 12 years in my classes and have asked many former students as well as current students about the impact of the pledge. Many of them said, it makes me think. I had a 2007 graduate stop me a few years ago and say, I cheated on many tests at New Prague High School, but in your class, I didn't. The words in the pledge, my honor, won't allow me to cheat, is what this student said. I urge the school to move toward an honor pledge with the consequence of 0 for cheating. I'd like the emphasis lesson in honesty to be placed on the front end of the test. If that's unacceptable, I would like the board to consider allowing the consequences to the discretion of each classroom teacher. Before we change the direction of our district's moral compass and take the first step on the slippery slope of dishonesty, I would expect serious dialogue among all stakeholders in this district, K through 12, parents, students, teachers, and administrators. Otherwise, I feel like I've fallen victim to the divide and conquer tactic. We're all here for the same reason tonight, because we believe New Prague area schools can be a premier district. I believe that too, and know we can do it the honest way. Thank you. Thank you.
Tammy Tukalski. You're next.
I don't have a question at this time. Can I refrain until later or not?
Sure. Oh, but
Okay, as long as it's during the open.
yeah,
forum.
I'll just call on you later. Okay, I'll put you at the bottom of the pile. Benjamin Benson.
Hello, I am a student of New Prague High School currently, a senior, and I just wanted to say that we have a great facility, great staff, and very great student body. What we as New Prague High School and New Prague schools need to do is instill in our kids a basis of morality and a basis of ethical rights about what we need to do as a society. Cheating has never been prosperous. One thing that I see as many kids just kind of take that as the easy way out, to kind of cheat or go through that. And we, as a high school, want to get the best scores, right? We want to be that top school that has the best students with the highest grades, so that we can be that prominent school that everyone looks up to. A metaphorical example to this would be, take my car outside. It's rather junky car. And let's print out a giant Ferrari or Bugatti on a piece of paper and stick it on the side. Does that make it a Ferrari or a Bugatti? No, that does not make it a Ferrari. That makes it a crappy car with a fake, crappy looking piece of paper taped to it. And if that, as a school, we're saying, let us take this people who don't do well in school and just hide them under the shroud of, look what we have. We give them second chances until they get better. Why don't we teach the students to be better the first time? Why don't we tell them to do it now? And if it's something that we're saying that they will learn later in life, or we don't need to teach them right now, or whatever. I think that that is absolutely wrong. And as the students are in New Prague High School, middle school, and elementary school, this is when we are in our greatest development stages and when we learn most from the faculty, from our peers. This is when we grow to be great human beings. And if we're learning that, oh, we get second chances throughout life, we're going to just fail in the real world. Please have us not be so dependent upon second chances, but to do our best the first time. That's all.
Carrie Schroeder.
Hi, I'm Carrie Schrader. I am the World Language Department Head and Spanish teacher, in which I've taught all levels of Spanish. And it really disappoints me to find that they want to give a 50% to cheating when, like Greg had also stated, we have been told many times that we need to teach kids. We want every kid to learn. All kids learn at a different level, and so it's our time to take our extra time for kids to come in, teach them so that they learn and still get to retake tests. When they retake tests, we do have a policy that some kids can get up to 70%. We also have a policy in our department that the kids can get full time, or full credit. But at the same time, those kids are coming in to learn. If we're giving them 50% to cheat, we're teaching them to cheat. We're not teaching them that they can come in and actually learn the material and that they can still get credit for cheating when really they should be coming in and learning it. The other thing that's kind of disappointing about the whole situation is that we keep saying we're getting them ready for the real world, but aren't we supposed to be getting them ready for college? And if you look at the college criteria and their policies, we're not getting them ready. I'm a CIS teacher here at the high school, and at the University of Minnesota, their policy is for scholastic dishonesty, that it's any act that violates the right of another student with respect to academic work and involves misrepresentation of a student's own work. It also includes, but it's not limited to, cheating on assessments and examinations, plagiarizing, which is misrepresenting at one's own anything done by another, submitting the same or substantially similar papers or creative work for more than one course without consent of the instructors concerned, deriving another necessary course materials, and sabotaging another work. For these people, they should be under the grounds for awarding a grade of an F or an N for that entire course. So it's even more rigorous than what we would be doing, because they would just end up getting an F for whatever they had cheated on. So by telling them that it's okay to cheat, we're not getting them ready for college. We also have Mankato State. Mankato State also said that it's a liberty given to the professor, which has been given away from us. Our administrators have said that they're the ones who have the discretion to tell the students if they can retake or not. But they also say 0 for tests, F for the course. St. Cloud State University, Winona, we also have a biology class through Southwest State. They also say it's to the discretion of the teacher. And again, it can be that the students get a 0 on that assignment, and then it could even lead up to suspension and expulsion. So what we're getting the kids ready for could be so much more severe at the college level if we're not preparing them ahead of time. Thanks.
Thank you. Julie Blaschko. Okay. Mitch Gullickson.
Hello, my name is Mitch Gullickson. I'm a student at New Prague High School. I'll be a senior this year. And my opinion of cheating is it's laziness. Bottom line, you didn't take the time to learn the material, and it just shows that you're lazy. You don't want to learn it. So when people ask if they can, like, hey, can I copy your homework? I say no. I'm very strict on that. I hate seeing it. And I just believe that cheating should not be tolerated. We're trying to prepare these kids for the future. And how is this going to affect our integrity? It's all about integrity and honesty. And I don't believe we're preparing kids for the future by allowing them to have another chance. Because in the real world, you don't necessarily get a second chance. When you mess up, you got to learn from your mistake and move on. So I just strongly believe that we should reconsider this, and that's all I got for you.
Jen Saylor?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jen Seiler, and this is my 16th year teaching at New Prague High School. I can say I'm not real clear on the foundation and reasoning behind such a drastic sudden change in our dishonesty cheating policy at New Prague High School that has come about, and I am quite disturbed by it. I happened to read in the New Prague Times 2 weeks ago that the policy had stemmed from an incident last January. I'm not sure if that means there was an upset parent or not. However, since last spring when the new policy was announced and I signed the petition against it, I have had since then have numerous conversations with parents of kids in our community. I will tell you that all of them would expect their child to receive a 0 if they blatantly cheat on a quiz, test, or assignment, and they're shocked that we're even discussing that tonight. What we have been told is that the policy is due to the philosophy that a grade must reflect what a student knows. That is fine philosophy, but our school policy as a climate should reflect so much more than content memorized for a grade. I understand the idea of a grade reflecting how well the students know, the standards and the content. However, I would also argue that our job as an excellent school district is to prepare the kids for so much more than that. At the end of the day, if my own children know the standards, awesome. But what is really important to my husband and I in the greater scheme of tests and grades is then knowing that honesty, integrity, respect, preparation, responsibility is of the utmost importance in life and to us. Our school policies have hidden real messages to the students. A 0 tolerance policy on bullying sends the message we expect kindness and respect. Our 0 tolerance policy on cheating we used to have conveys the message we expect honesty and integrity. I'd ask, if we change our policy on this, what message are we trying to send to our students? If a student is caught purposely, blatantly cheating, there should be 0 tolerance. The new policy treats our kids as if they don't know any better. The argument from administration was they are not in college yet, so we have to give them some chances, some leeway. True, our kids are young. They're 15 to 18 years old, but they know what cheating is and they know it is wrong. Furthermore, the policy off my son's 5th grade teacher's website is this, I quote, "Students can redo an assignment if they choose. They will receive half the points back when corrected. It may not be done for late assignments, quizzes, tests, or large projects. If they don't even allow redos on any quizzes, any late work, any test, there is no doubt in my mind they don't allow redos when cheating. So we hold our 5th graders in this district more accountable to knowing right from wrong than our high schoolers." I love where I am in the New Prague district, I really do. And I thank you guys for coming and supporting teachers all the time at the welcome back and the closing. I praise my students often for how much I appreciate just how wonderful they really are. We don't need to lower the bar for them. We can keep the bar of honesty and integrity high in New Prague, and they will rise to the occasion. And you know what? They will thank us in the long run.
Todd Knutson?
Good evening, I'm Todd Knutson, and I have a student at the high school and in the middle school, and honestly, I don't have an awful lot to add to what's already been said, other than the policy change seems to me to be lowering the standard when we should be in times of raising the bar, raising the standards, and quite honestly, not every student that graduates from high school goes on to college. And if they are taught in high school that cheating isn't that big of a deal, they're going to apply that to other places in life, and where's it going to stop? Are they going to go work at McDonald's and cheat customers? Are they going to cheat the government? Are they going to cheat their employers? It's just going to snowball. It has that potential, and I think that a lot of the values that kids learn, they learn in school, unfortunately, not necessarily at home. Not all the kids have great home lives, and the values that they learn and live their life by, they pick up in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Pauls?
I'm Dan Pauls, former teacher at New Prague High School for 32 years. I'm here to basically talk to you about the fact that our halls, right in the locker bank, have some major posters or banners. I look at the banner behind you today. We have some just like that sitting in our locker bank. Respect, integrity, honesty. If that's the truth, then those need to be reinforced. If not, then take the posters down and put them someplace where people can't see them. The public sees those on a day-by-day basis. I'm very proud of this school district. It was an honor to teach here. The people that have spoke, some of them have been my colleagues, some of them have been my former students, and I'm glad that I get to know them on this daily basis and yearly basis. But I think we need to seriously think about the messages being sent. And a couple weeks ago I read in the Star Tribune where they had the new changes in the school district. New Prague was mentioned. And they talked about going back to the 7-period day. And they talked about every student having a computer. But this policy, this issue wasn't even suggested. And I think it's best that we be transparent on this. And I dare you to cheat in the military and see what happens. A lot of our kids go into the military out of this high school. A lot of them go off to college and vocational school. I think we need to seriously think about what this policy is saying to children. Thank you.
Carrie DeVolk.
Good evening. I'm Carrie DeVolk, and I teach in the Language Arts Department here at the high school. I've been teaching for 32 years, 15 of those in New Prague, and I've always been impressed with the integrity of this district. And I wholeheartedly agree with everything that has been said articulately here tonight. I plan to say many of the same things. One item that hasn't been brought up is the reason for this change, and I'm a little puzzled by that. I haven't seen any data that supports the fact that any high school student has failed a class because they were caught cheating on a test and they received a 0. And I think that's the concern. That's what Mr. Seibert has related to us, that he's afraid for students to receive 0s for courses and then their GPA suffers, and that it's a long-term effect on the student. And I don't know that that's the case. So I'd like to see that data, because we haven't made a lot of data-driven decisions in the district, which is wise. But I am puzzled for the reason for the change, and I'd like that to be answered too. Thank you.
Allison Olson.
Hello, I'm Allison Olson, and I am a proud alumni of New Prague High School and New Prague Schools. I am currently a teacher in the Social Studies department at the high school, and I'm also a parent of a 5th grader and a 2nd grader. Dan Pulse kind of touched on what I was going to mention about character education and what, beyond test scores, what it is that we want to teach our kids. And the banners hanging in the locker bank every day when I walked by, ever since this policy has been introduced, I see the words honesty, integrity, responsibility hanging there, with fairness and other ones as well. We also, at the high school, have postcards that we're encouraged to send home to parents and share the good news that their kids are doing. And across the top of the postcard are those words, sent to every parent in this district: respect, honesty, integrity, responsibility. If this cheating policy goes through as is, I would request that those postcards be altered because we're not living those words, in my opinion. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying to write everything down here. Matt Schamebauer.
Hi, I'm Matt Schamebauer. I'm a 11th grader at New Prague High School right now. I do just want to say I'm speaking for myself. This is not, nobody made me do this. This is just me. Schools have a big job, and they have to, I mean, it's a great purpose. You have to prepare people for the real world, and that a lot of that is knowing facts about how it works and giving you the skills to do real careers. And there are some harder to pin points that you need to get across, and one of those is, if I understand right, is you don't lie, you don't cheat. And that previously the 0% cheating policy made that make sense. It doesn't pay off. It just doesn't work. Now, if I'm a student and grades are really the only way that that schools can motivate kids to learn that stuff. It's the number one thing. And I'm a kid and my number one motivation is grades. And cheating doesn't get caught. I know, I've heard kids talk about it in the locker banks, like, oh yeah, I just copied my whole test off of that kid's paper. And if I know that if it's not likely that I get caught, and if I were to get caught, I would still get a 70%, my number one goal is a good grade, then the underlying message that you're teaching is that it pays to cheat. And that's kind of scary, just kind of thinking for the world in the future, if that's what we are taught to think. I understand the goal of this policy is to make sure that everybody succeeds, and that's a wonderful goal. But if you're defining success as a good grade, then we might as well just sit around and watch movies all day and everybody gets an A. And I think success should be being able to hold yourself and be a real person who can function in the world and make sure that the world is full of people like that. So I'm actually really glad that this is happening, that the teachers are getting fired up about this policy that doesn't really make a lot of sense, because I don't think that most of the vast majority of cheating is caught in the schools. So I would think need a little give on both sides. The teachers need to be more cautious of this, notice it when it happens, and students need to understand that it does not work. Thank you.
Tammy, I'm to you.
I'm Tammy Tukalski, and I have 4 children back in 2005 when my oldest graduated. And I'm thinking back to their experience, which was a great one. But I'm thinking now, if this would go through, or if it were left up to a teacher to decide whether cheating's allowed in their classroom or not, I can assure you that we would request a teacher who does not allow cheating. And I'm thinking that would be an administrative nightmare to be switching kids around when teachers, or when parents find out who the teacher is and finds out that they are okay with cheating. That we would not want that for our kids. So just please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Could amend the agenda to move it up earlier if you'd like. I mean, it's up to the board, or just should we just follow the agenda? We could amend the agenda to move this discussion to the early part. We got to.
I don't think we have a very long agenda.
What's that? You do what you want. I said the agenda isn't really that long, but.
Okay. Yep.
Then let's just keep going.
Keep going
Okay.
through the agenda. That's
Yep.
the easiest.
Perfect. Yep. Approval for the agenda. Motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Approval for the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved. Second.
Any discussion? Ready? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. I am to board committee reports. Policy report.
Most of the policies that we reviewed this last month are directly for the board conduct, and we just put language in some of them more in line with the Minnesota School Boards Association. There was another policy called the one-to-one policy that Sandy Lynn is recommending be rescinded because it has to do with how computers were checked out in the past, and now that they have Chromebooks, those issues are addressed in other agreements that the parents and students sign.
Anything else, Sherry?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, Janelle, thank you, because she has now inputted a summary of policy change recommendations, which means there's a chart, if you wanted just to click on that, for anyone that wanted to see it, board members, administration, and public, which is nice because it will tell you changes that were made and review, and then it will add what was added or reviewed, and then if there's no changes, it will say so. So when you do click on it, or if you wanted to view one, and there are strikeouts or red, that would mean that we did change the language or took it out. But I wanted to thank you for that because that was really nice to look at that.
Yeah, I like that also. I was
Really
gonna
awesome,
comment
yeah.
on it.
Okay. Denny, Southwest Metro Co-op.
We had our meeting last Tuesday, and basically it was a very routine meeting, nothing out of the ordinary, just the regular business work of the co-op.
Okay, good. CPAC?
We did not have a CPAC meeting.
Don, Community Ed?
On the community ed, we had a meeting on September 4th, just a small meeting, and a problem has come up. We offer scholarships to students, but we tend to forget that a lot of older people take classes too, and not everybody can afford, or some people run into problems. So we've changed the scholarships to anyone who qualifies. This is for our classes K through 12 and seniors. Unless the class is through AARP fee, then we can't do anything about it. Next thing we did is we reduced some of the paperwork, especially for the reduced luncheon. They had tons of paperwork, and so we've reduced that down. Another thing that we've decided to do, the limit is $200 on scholarships, and some families could use it all up in the fall and then not send their kids to something in the spring, which kids may want to participate in. So what we're doing is, if they would choose to break it up, we would have matching funds. So if somebody wanted to take something in the fall and it's a $50, if they wanted to pay $25, then the scholarship could be $25. And this way they could have summer funds left over in the spring. Everything is non-continuous 1 year to the next. There'll be more strict tacking. Some people didn't use their scholarship 1 year and they wanted to use it again the next year. And above all, it's going to come down to each case is on an individual basis, whether that's senior high or seniors or students, and we're trying not to turn anybody away. So.
Good. Great.
Oh,
Okay.
thanks,
Great.
Don.
Thanks. Superintendent Dittburner.
All right. I'm going to go over MCA test results, give you an update on some few things and a few things on good news. Well, actually, this is good news here, but as far as MCA test results, we did a comparison of 10 comparable school districts, that was mentioned earlier in the policy. And I already shared with you, we were number one in science, math, and reading. And the comparables, the number one is in the New Prague Times for neighboring school districts. After further research the last month, I had a number of teachers ask me how we rate with basically the best school districts in the state. And I also have that put together. But as you can see, as I shared on opening days with our entire staff, of our comparables, New Prague ranks number one on the MCAs in math, reading, and science. That is first time ever that we're ranked number one in all three for all of them. You can see on the bottom how we compare to the state. The next one. And what go ahead, keep going to the comparables. Oops.
That's middle school.
Yep. And then we had elementary there. And what I want to show you tonight too is when we get to, keep going, the top 10 in the state, the best school districts in the state. Mathematics, we were 7th, and this is the 57 school districts around the metro area. And most of these are every year tops in the state. We were 7th in math with 79% proficiency, and this is as a district. And reading, we're 10th at 73% proficiency. And in science, we were 4th. So obviously that's something to be very proud about. We've never been in the top 10, and this year we're a top 10 in all three areas. So it says a lot about our students and staff, and what a great job they've done, and learning the standards and doing well on those tests. So want to recognize that. Go on to good news too, and we've got a few CIS teachers here today. We have 104 students right now enrolled in CIS classes, college and the school classes, which will earn probably about 460 some credits. This alone this year will save approximately $214,000 in college tuition by enrolling in these concurrent classes, college and the school classes. So the staff I know has put a lot of work, a lot of training for that, and they're having, I know our students are having a great experience. You want to have a stretch culture, something to really push the kids and prepare them for obviously college and beyond, and I think these classes do that. And with it, these kids obviously save a lot of money in the meantime too. So we're very thankful for that program and for what they do. A few other things, update. Our facility study, we started that 2 weeks ago. We met on Wednesday, and obviously Jerry and Kitten were there. We've got 34 people on our facilities task force. We've got Von Dirks from Old Architect and Pat Overend from ICS Consulting. He's a construction specialist that are co-facilitating meetings. The minutes from the first meeting are on the website. Basically, that first meeting, the task force members broke up into small groups and basically answered the question, present to them what are their biggest concerns when it comes to facilities in the future for New Prague. What questions do you have? What are some preconceived notions about facilities, that type of thing. And like I said, the minutes are on the website. The next couple of meetings will be more information-based, using some of the information we've gotten from our demographic study that was done last spring, along with a facility analysis and interviews. We'll be having a survey going out to all staff, teachers on facilities coming up here. And so gathering that information and sharing that with the group will be coming up here. Our next meeting is this Wednesday. It'll be at a different building every time. We've got 6 meetings scheduled. So our next meeting will be at the high school. It'll take place in the media center. There'll be a tour at 5:30 for those people on the task force that want to tour the high school facility, and the meeting will start at 6:30. So I thought the first meeting went very well. I don't know, Jerry and Kitten, if you want to comment on it at all?
I think you covered pretty well everything.
There's a lot of people who are very highly qualified in all the different areas that we need to have representation in facilities and, you know, a few teachers and things like that.
Yep.
It was really, really good to hear everyone's background.
Yeah, I thought it was, the group that we have, I think is, like you said, it's well-balanced. It represents all areas of the district and all types of occupations. We've got, I should have counted, but out of the 34, I bet you over a third are non-parents, don't have kids in the system anymore, but still care about the direction of the district. So it was pretty neat to have everyone on there and collaborating on that. So I think we'll let the process go, and like we said at the meeting, or I said at the meeting, again, it's not about what we want, I want, a school board wants right now. It's what we feel is the school district needs, and I think we have a qualified group of people that will help guide us in the right direction there. Also, I'll just give you a stadium update right now. This weekend, they were on the began putting in the track process there. They started putting in the polyurethane surface today. That will be ongoing for the next 7 days, and it's we're praying for good weather because we have a lot of events coming up here. We've got a couple local construction companies right now working on a couple other things with the stadium. A donor wall is being put up. It was partially done, and people that were at the football game Friday saw it, but Roger Wires is doing that, and that is going to look fantastic. So we have information out that people that want their family or their names on the wall. It's $150 for a 4x8 brick, or 4x16 brick is $350, and we'll be getting donations coming up for that to pay for the wall. But I think that's going to be a very nice landmark to have. And we also are putting up a storage shed / locker room behind the west fence in Paul Hansel Construction. They're getting near completion on that. It's going up fast right now. So track, donor wall, and shed, and hopefully by homecoming, where we'll have the groundbreaking or the dedication ceremony at that, everything will be done at that point there. So it's an exciting time seeing all that take place. The last thing I want to mention too, we had a calendar survey go out to all staff, teachers, parents. Last week, the deadline is this Friday. We've had already 1,000 people respond. The first question is just ranking 4 possible start and ending dates, and the other question was about the yes or no about the having school on Martin Luther King Day and President's Day, and just getting some feedback there before we start putting that together. But like I told you at the work session, I'd like to get that done this fall as soon as possible, but I want to be able to give everyone a chance to provide that feedback. So, but we already have, like I said, over 1,000 people responding to that, so that's pretty good.
Great.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Okay, Pochke. First of all, I'd like to compliment everybody involved. This includes parents and all. Friday night we had a crisis, a weather crisis, which you can't do anything about, and the police informed everybody to get off the stands. Obviously, there was lightning and other things going on with the weather. And I will compliment everybody, the players, the workers, everybody did a fantastic job. And my other question is on this that we just got. It's obviously a revised of something we had gotten before.
Yep.
Are the revisions?
The few of the buildings didn't have completed their action plan on there. So goals are still the same, but some of the strategies for achieving the goals was incomplete. So it's just a more complete version than the first one you had.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Audit and financial report by Kim Hilberg. Hi, Kim.
Okay. Thank you for having me here this evening to go through audit results for the year ended June 30th, 2014. In front of you, you have two bound documents, the financial statements themselves, that's the thick document, and then the executive audit summary, that's the thin document. I'm going to be going through the thin document this evening and referring to the financial statements from time to time. I'll let you know when we do that. We're going to start on page 1 of your executive audit summary, and this gives kind of a rundown of the audit results for the year. First and foremost is the audit opinion. We have issued what's called a clean or an unmodified opinion on your financial statements. That's the highest ranking that you can get in terms of an audit opinion. It means your financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, so everything there looks good. Internal control over financial reporting. We have two items of note. The first of which is the financial reporting aspect that we prepare your financial statements and the related footnote disclosures for that. Very common with the client base that I work with, and a lot of my clients, and personally I see it as well, as more or less a byproduct of the audit. We're working with the data. We might as well just go ahead and prepare the disclosures and the financial statements as well. The other item is a really minor detail, but one that we are required to report nonetheless. We do a disbursements test during the course of our audit. We randomly select 40 disbursements to review, and one of those 40 we selected didn't have supporting documentation for it. I believe it was around a $40 item. Very, very small. So I don't even really consider that much of anything, but our audit standards require us to report that to you nonetheless. Single audit is a federal area of your financial statement audit. We are required to do this type of audit anytime you spend more than $500,000 of federal financial assistance in any one given year. For the year ended June 30th, 2014, you spent about $1.2 million of federal dollars. And we tested two programs, the Special Education Cluster and the Child Nutrition Cluster. Both of those combined are about $1 million when we look at that. And we did not have any findings control or compliance-wise for either of those programs. Very, very clean for those. Minnesota legal compliance is an area that the Office of the State Auditor has us review compliance with areas of 7 different areas of state statute. Our work related to that had a minor finding related to forms that are filed upon completion of contracted work. So there again, very minor. The student activity funds are actually a separate audit, all unto themselves. They do have their own separate financial statements, although they are bound in with your regular financial statements for the district. They have their own opinion. Starting on page 72, their own financial statements. On those financial statements, we issue what's called an adverse opinion. The reason being is that the state says for those you can have a more simplified reporting format for that, which would be a beginning cash balance, cash received, cash paid out, and ending cash balance during the year. So you don't have any of the GAAP required payables, receivables, footnotes, disclosures, and whatnot for those. So the adverse opinion is really due to the reporting format that the Minnesota Department of Education is requiring for that. It's not that you're doing anything incorrectly. And they have their own compliance guide as well, and our work related to that disclosed no findings also. So overall, when I look at everything, very clean. A couple minor things, but nothing significant or anything that I would consider of concern. I think your finance department, Sandy and her group of people working with her, do a very good job getting things ready, pulling the financial information together. Everything is very clean, and I think the report that we have here this evening just speaks very highly of the work that they do. I'm going to then go on to page 2 of your executive audit summary. One item that is a little different this year, middle of page 2, we discussed that there's a new accounting standard that was implemented this year, GASB standard statement number 65, items previously reported as assets and liabilities. And for that, I'm actually going to flip over into your financial statements themselves to page 17. The background with this is that the GASB, or the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, took a look at the financial reporting elements, and previously you reported assets, liabilities, and some form of equity, whether it was called net position or fund balance. They decided that there were items that were reported as assets that really were not assets, and items reported as liabilities that really were not liabilities. So they created two new financial reporting elements, and you actually have both of them on your statement of net position. The deferred outflows of resources and the deferred inflows of resources. So those are items that were in one way, shape, or form previously reported in another category and are now carved out in their own. The GASB feels that this provides you some better information in terms of your analysis of the financial data. I'll let you be the judge of it. I know everybody's still trying to get used to how they work and what they are, but you're actually the first district that I've worked with so far this year that has both of those reporting elements. So it's kind of nice to refer to both and be able to show you that you have both on your financial statements. Then continuing on the bottom of page 2 through page 3 of the executive audit summary, we talk about accounting estimates. I always like to remind the boards that I work with that your financial statements contain a lot of different estimates, whether it's ADM counts, expenditure data. All of those are considered estimates as they are not quite finalized. They actually won't be finalized until February, March, sometimes as late as April. So what we're working on with now is best available information. And management really doesn't feel that there would be a significant difference between what is estimated now and what's finalized come later this winter or spring. Pages 6 and 7 are our management letter, just kind of going through the fact that we prepared your financial statements, the disbursement without the support, that little item, and then the student activity receipts. They have a material weakness as well because the internal control structure around the receipting cycle for the student activity funds are not as strong or robust as the receipting cycle that the district has in place. You have a lot of different points of cash collection when you think about all the students going out and doing fundraising for, selling cookie dough, magazines, whatever the case may be. They're inherently just kind of a weaker control system and just by their nature generate that. With that being said, we're going to move to the PowerPoint presentation. And we're going to start on the top of page 9. We have copies, colored copies of the slides that we're going to be going through with the financial information. The first of which is a summary of your general fund operating results for the year. You can see on the far right your total general fund added to the bottom line a little over $400,000 to a total ending fund balance in the general fund just a little over $9.7 million. As we move to the left, we have different categories of fund balance. Your capital-related restrictions, operating capital, health and safety, deferred maintenance. We're going to go through those in a little greater detail in a couple of slides. The non-capital related restrictions, those relate to revenue sources provided by the state to be used for specific purposes. If that money goes unspent in any one given year, it's required to be set aside for future years to be used for that specific purpose. The $189,000 that you have, the vast majority of it is made up of gifted and talented money, about $120,000, and then the rest of it really is staff development dollars. Then you have committed fund balance for severance, the $831,000. I always think whenever you can set money aside for that, it's just really good financial planning on your part. At some point in time, you're going to have those severance payments as your workforce retires, and recognizing that and having that money set aside ensures that you have the fund balance there to utilize at that time as opposed to having to dip into that unassigned fund balance. And then last but certainly not least would be the column on the far left, your what we call non-spendable and unassigned fund balance, those two together, the $8 million. Of that, you do have a little bit of what we call non-spendable fund balance, or items that are not easily converted into cash, about $196,000. The rest of it then is your unassigned fund balance. We used to call that your unreserved, undesignated, but now it's referred to as unassigned. As auditors, we always like to measure this rule of thumb as a percentage of annual expenditures, just to kind of get a gauge on the financial health of the general fund. If we were to do that, you would be at 22.4% of annual expenditures. That's what that $7.856 million would be. You can see here, based on the historical information in this slide, you came a long way from where you were in 2010. I know it took a lot of hard work and financial planning to get there as well, so I commend you on the work that you did to get here. Operating capital fund balance is next. One of your capital-related fund balances. A little bit of a spend down, but continues to look healthy. I always like to see districts have a healthy operating capital fund balance. Often your capital needs are costly, quite large, so anything you have set aside here to utilize what means you're just saving that unassigned fund balance in the future. Health and safety fund balance, a little bit of a deficit. This one can run in a deficit from time to time. As you can see on the slide back in 2010, you had one as well. It doesn't mean anything negative. It really just means that you have future levy authority for those dollars. A lot of this fund balance is due to the fact of your timing of the costs incurred for the project versus the levy revenue that you are going to receive. And for a district your size, when you're coming within $20,000, I would consider that pretty much break even for this fund balance. We see a lot of wild swings with a lot of other districts here. Your restricted fund balance, as I mentioned earlier, of the $189,000, the vast majority of it is made up of gifted and talented, about $120,000, with the remainder of it being staff development dollars. Food service. Not uncommon to see a decrease in food service fund balances. A lot of it was driven by the change in nutritional guidelines. A lot of districts have seen decreased in participation, and some have seen that level off, others not as much. I am waiting to see what the rest of my other districts have when we're finalizing their audits. The general consensus is that it's those nutritional guidelines are still taking a lot to get used to, and districts are still feeling it in terms of the food service revenues. Community service fund balance is next. This one is actually made up of 4 different components of fund balance. And one of those happens to have a deficit. As I reported last year, it did at that time. It still does continue to have a deficit. This year in 2014, you transferred about $50,000 from the general fund to the community service fund to help make some headway with that deficit, and you are continuing to do that. Deficit currently is at about $70,000, which is an improvement of $30,000 from the previous year. So you're making some headway there. Debt service fund balance will continue to look high. You'll notice the change between 2013 and 14 was rather significant. The reason being is that you had about $29.8 million of old bonds that you had refunded or paid off here in 2014. You had that money setting aside in an escrow account waiting for that date for those bonds to be called, and that took place here in 2014. Of the $15.7 million remaining, 14.5 of that is also still in an escrow account waiting to refund some old debt. I believe that will take place here in 2015. Once that is done, you should see your debt service fund balance drop down to what would be a more typical level for you. Revenue pie charts. These are rather interesting this year. The first one we have is the general fund revenue pie chart with the various sources of revenue for your general fund. You can see the vast majority of it comes from the state, so no surprise, you're very dependent upon state funding. The one thing, if you were to take this year's revenue pie chart and compare it to the previous years, you would notice that the pieces of the pie shift somewhat. And the reason being is that the state paid back that tax shift that they had put in place about 3 years ago. So your last year local property taxes, which are currently 7.3%, last year it made up of 12.6% of your revenue. Your state sources this year are the 87.7, and last year they were 81.9. Your tax shift was about $2.1 million, and when they paid that back, it wasn't new revenue. It was more or less just shifting money from one bucket to another, like what they did several years ago when they put the tax shift in place. So it's really just skewing the allocation or the proportion of those two pieces of the pie for you this year. Same thing with your total governmental fund revenues. Here again, you can see the vast majority of it comes from the state as well. A bigger piece with the local property tax here because you do have levy in your community service fund and your debt service fund as well. And these pieces of the pie would have shifted too from the previous year. Weighted average daily membership is next. So these are your pupil counts that are weighted by grade level. The ADMs, actually your seat counts related to the 4,506, we're just shy of 3,900 to kind of give you an idea of how your pupil counts relate to the weighting. The next series of slides we have are all expenditures. The 2014 column, the far right blue bar, is based off the audited financial statements. To the left, then we have 2010 through 2013. That's your historical information, expenditures per ADM that we obtained from the Minnesota Department of Education's website. And then on the far right, we have some comparative data from 2013. The far right would be the state average, so every district in the state of Minnesota. And the one right next to it would be what we consider your peer group. That information is 2013 because the state is still in the process of accumulating 2014's data, and it won't actually be available until next spring. So the first slide we have here is district and school administration and support services. Regular instruction is next. This is where the bulk of your classroom dollars are spent, with the exception of vocational as well as special ed. Now, the state carves those out into two separate reporting categories. Vocational instruction. This one is somewhat difficult to do comparisons between yourself and peer as well as state. A lot of it has to do with how your teachers are licensed. If they're actually licensed in this area, then they can be coded to this particular area. If they are not, then they're coded in regular instruction. So it can kind of vary, and it's not necessarily an apples to apples type comparison. Special education instruction is next. One thing I got to say here is your costs are very flat. Not a whole lot of change from 2010, and I can't say that with a lot of districts that I work with. We see increases and oftentimes substantial increases each year. This one is very difficult to manage. A lot of it depends upon what walks through your doors in terms of student needs, and oftentimes you don't know what that will be until the kids actually start showing up. So budgeting for this can be a bit of a shot in the dark at times, if you will. Instructional support services is next. This would include areas such as staff development, media center, curriculum. Those would all be included in here. 2014, you saw an increase in this particular area. I believe you had your wireless access points replaced, so that increased in here, and some curriculum as well. Pupil support services, that would include psychologists, school nurse, social workers, just to kind of give you an idea of what we would have included in this particular category.
I have a question about that one.
Sure.
We hired a counselor that is involved with the careers counseling. Would that go under vocational instruction, or would that be found in pupil support services?
That would be in pupil support. Mm-hmm. Yep. Site building equipment and other. The costs associated with maintaining and operating your facilities is not necessarily the capital outlay side, it's more the operational side. One thing we have noticed with every district that we've been working with so far this year is it is increasing in this area. I think a lot of it has to do with the Minnesota winter we had. Higher utilities, more snow removal, all of that is really reflected here in 2014 being higher. Transportation is next. This one is always an interesting slide, and I think a lot of it has to do with whether a district owns their own buses or whether they contract services. So districts that typically own their own buses will oftentimes be lower than both peer and state average, and those that contract services tend to be higher. Here again, you own your own buses, and costs have been relatively flat when you look back through 2010. Food service is next. Not a whole lot of change between 2013 and 14. And, I talked earlier about your food service fund went down, so we know it wasn't cost driven. This is oftentimes a very good indication that it's more the revenue side or the participation level of the students in that program. And like I said, you are not alone in that particular situation. Community service is next. Costs associated with the various programs in that particular fund. And then finally, your debt service. And this one looks very unusual this year because you had that large refunding of $29.8 million of bonds that took place this year. Had that not taken place, you would have been around $1,775 per pupil unit, just to kind of give you an idea of how much that refunding actually skewed this particular year's data.
What would have it been if we wouldn't have done the bond?
1,775 is what it would have been. Oh. I expect 2015 to be high as well, not as high as 2014, but a more elevated level because you'll have a refunding taking place here soon as well. Overall, everything looks good. The financial health of the general fund is good. Even though you had some decreases in community service and food service, I don't see it as anything at this point that would be concerning or anything to be alarmed at. And like I said earlier, I got to thank Sandy and her staff for all the hard work that they do to have us come in August and to be able to present audit results here in September. I think they worked really hard and they do a good job.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah, I think we talked about this last year. The student activity receipts, do you recommend changing anything in the way that it's being done, or is it just something that's going to be noted every year?
It probably will be something that's noted every year. To be able to eliminate that as a material weakness would get to the point where you would almost have to have every student doing fundraising running around with a receipt book and writing receipts and giving it to people and then turning it in. And I think the whole idea with student activities is to encourage student participation and get them involved. And sometimes if you have too much red tape or policies and procedures, you sometimes discourage the students from actually participating. Ironically, I sit on a committee that's in the process of rewriting the activity fund accounting manual, and we're going through a number of different ideas. We're kind of figuring out what worked, what didn't work, that type of thing. I've got another CPA that sits on there with me as well. We feel for what those activity funds do in terms of student participation to be able to give you a clean opinion because of the control structure being up to par, if you will, would probably be detrimental to the overall objective of student participation.
I believe you said our general fund balance is at 22%.
Yep, 22.4.
Is that
That's correct.
generally what you see, a trend what you see at other schools? Because about, I think 5 years ago, we were at 1 or 2%.
Right. We recommend, rule of thumb, minimum 8 to 16. 1 to 2 months worth of operations, and there's going to be times where you're higher than that, times where you're lower than that. It really varies from district to district. I would say I have some districts that are even in the mid to upper 20%, and I've got one that's looking at a 1% fund balance this year. A lot of it has to do with, let's Sandy and I were kind of talking about this earlier. It's so easy, a $500,000 mistake to happen here or there, something unexpected, and all of a sudden districts find themselves in financial difficulty. One thing is once you get to that point, it's very, very tough to get out. And like I said, you guys came from, a low point in 2010, and I know you did a lot of work to get there. It's not easy. The choices that sometimes have to be made to do that are difficult ones.
Anything else? Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
To certify the 2015 preliminary levy.
Do we need a motion to accept this audit report, or?
Okay. Thanks, Don. Okay, I'll accept a motion to accept the audit report.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Sorry. Now we'll talk about the preliminary levy.
Okay, there's two documents attached regarding the, excuse me, certifying the preliminary levy. One is a sheet of paper landscape that has lots of numbers on it, and you're used to seeing this every year, but I thought it would be better if I just tried to summarize some of the information for you this year. We are required to certify the preliminary levy by September 30th each year, and the current levy report from MDE shows the levy increasing about 2%, or about $183,000, up to about $9.6 million. Many reasons for that small increase. The general fund is increasing 3.5%. Most of it is due to prior year adjustments in some areas that aren't repeated in the 2015 levy. Part of it is the economic development abatement. We were supposed to be levying for that in arrears, but we levied for it the very first year, so we had to skip last year, so now we're adding that back in for $30,000. Our equity revenue is increasing, and that increases both aid and levy, so that is good news. And then our operating capital in the general fund is decreasing due to the capital facilities bond for the stadium improvements. The levy for that is moving to Fund 7 to pay off the principal and interest on the bonds that were used to finance those improvements. Community services is increasing 14%, and it's not a big amount of money. It's only $33,000, but mainly it's due to an increased need for school-age childcare. Those are children with special needs in our childcare programs, and we have to hire staff to support those children. Debt service is staying very, very stable, up about $19,000, and again, this will include some money from our operating capital levy that will be used to pay off those capital facility bonds. Tonight, I'm asking you to certify the maximum levy. MDE is still doing prior year adjustments and doing calculations. So if you certify maximum, then as adjustments are made, we don't have to come back and recertify the preliminary levy. I don't anticipate it changing much. It could change a few thousand here, one way or the other. Like I said, they're still doing some calculations. The final certification and truth and taxation hearing will be on Thursday, December 11th at 6:30 p.m. here, where I'll give an update on the 2014-15 budget, as well as the final levy for 2015. So I would ask that you, first, if you have any questions, and if I answer those, then you could approve the preliminary levy. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Andy, what did you say that you'll know by the amount?
Well, we'll know actually by December 11th. Okay. Yeah, they keep making changes all up until the end.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, a lot of districts, if they have questions on the ballot in November, they add those as well. So we don't have a ballot, but a lot of districts do. So they add a lot at the last minute. As far as the tax impact on a home, actually I talked with Scott County a little bit today, and the good news is that values have started to increase from 13 to 14, which is good news. With property taxes increasing, and of course some are decreasing, some are increasing. Sometimes farmland goes up more than residential. It's hard to say, it depends upon how your price is valued as far as what tax impact this would have on you. At the final levy, I will have more details on different examples of how it would be impacted.
I'll make a motion to certify the maximum levy.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the academic dishonesty policy.
As I shared at the work session, there was some work put into this, and really the attempt was to separate academics and behavior. Previously, the policy was that they received a 0 and there is no behavior, and so we tried to separate and have a progressive policy that dealt with the behavior and looked at still trying to assess their academic performance. The behavior looking at all the way from being taken out of NHS, affecting academic or extracurricular activities, community service, putting those things out there which were not out there before, and having a maximum of 50% is what's in front of you. One of the concerns that was raised at the work session was a comparison to the middle school. And as was stated tonight, the middle school policy states a possible 0, and our conversations with the middle school administration has indicated that that was not done last year. There were no 0s given in situations like that. And so we've had some preliminary discussions, but I think one of the things you had requested was to have that discussion. I'll be honest, our schedules have not allowed us to have that discussion to tie them together. So what you have in front of you tonight is what our proposal was at the work session. I guess my question is if the board would like that middle school and high school discussion to take place. We haven't had a chance to do that. And it does state their middle school policy is, in talking to their administration, is probably similar to what we had. Pretty vague and pretty short. But we have not had that opportunity to have those conversations.
Lonnie, I guess I would like that opportunity for that discussion, but what would be wrong with amending ours to go along with what they say, up to a maximum of 0? What would, it might sound a little bit nebulous and a little bit maybe not exact, but it would, still allow that
I think for now it would be, but I think we still need to have that conversation so that there is, one thing that Tim has consistently said is a systemic system. It's a system that is consistent, and I think we need to have those conversations because, again, their policy states possible 0, but the conversations I've had with their administration is that was not the practice.
I'll just say, as a former middle school principal, it'd be like talking on both sides of my mouth if that's what the middle school had, was a 0. But I think Jen mentioned, or I can't remember who mentioned, rattle off some of the schools such as Edina or Wayzata. It still comes down to teacher discretion. And when you talk about a 0, I mean, there could be some modification depending on the assignment that as an administrator or principal you don't even know about. But it is, that does make it more difficult when the middle school does have it, at 0 and the high school has something different.
I almost think this, after the presentations tonight, needs to have a little bit more discussion. As presented previously, and I think what we approved was 70%, so we obviously have to do, it will be replaced sometime. But if this is, when we were talking about this, it was kind of, well, this just affects a small number of students, so we want to try and help everyone be successful. And some of the presentations tonight, especially by the students, about how you really need to hold the line on what's important, I think we need to get more buy-in from our high school staff on what they want. I know there was a committee and it was voted on and that was presented to us, but there's always more sides to the decision, and I
think what we should do is table this for now.
I was going to make
this
that
would be
motion.
the best. Yeah, we can make a motion and bring it back and have further discussion, because obviously I think we want more data on some of this.
We've got,
brought up.
more. We've got another opportunity at a work session to continue the dialogue. Yes. And to, talk about some of the issues that were brought up this evening.
Right, obviously.
And then also the fact that we do have an inconsistent set of policies between the middle school and the high school. So I think all those things would warrant a tabling of this action.
Yes, and as we've seen, the people here are obviously very passionate about their ideas and stuff, and I think we have,
And I don't have a problem with that, because like I said, and like Lonnie said about being systematic, it probably isn't right that middle school is doing something different than the high school is doing. And obviously we want to keep high standards, and we do teach to the standards, and we reassess and reteach and do those things, but teaching, the message you're sending when you talk about character education is important. But to me, I think it's something we can discuss, and we're not, I don't think it's worth getting your egos in the way or anything like that. I think there's some good points there.
That being said, I'll make a motion to table the academic dishonesty policy.
Do we have to put a time on that, or is it that's
open-ended.
Okay, I'll second that.
Before we vote, thank you. Our current policy that we have approved says 70%. So can we
did it last time?
The old one was. I think you gotta go back to the old one.
Can we just vote on going back to the old one until we decide on what the new policy will be?
I would ask for some leniency on the behavior. Because we have nothing, if you go back to the old one, you have no behavior consequences. And that gives us, as administration, you have all sorts of freedom with that. But if you have nothing in writing at all, I guess if we're going to do that, I would like to keep the 0 with our amended behavior consequences, because I still want to hold them accountable for the behavior. And some people may say, now you're double whamming them because you're giving them a 0 on the grade, plus you're going to nail them with the behavior. But I guess Eric and I strongly feel that there is a behavior and there should be a consequence for that behavior. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't just simply be an academic consequence.
And actually, that was one of the things that I really liked about the policy that you brought forward.
Because there isn't a progressive, and it's a minor. We identified minor violations, we identified major violations, and we had a progression, and that tied to what we were doing in other areas of discipline, progressive. Now, somebody may say that's a double whammy, but...
Well, I would say this, it makes no sense to give a kid a 0 if they're caught cheating, but they can remain in the National Honor Society. You want to talk about integrity.
Right. And that was my question, was what happens if... And my question comes from the students that spoke is, they're striving for great grades and they're planning for their future. Well, what happens if my child can't be my child yet. But what happens if it is, my child who's in the AP class that's caught cheating, now what? What happens to him or her? You know, that's a college credit, right?
Potentially, yes.
So now what? You know, I'm sorry, but the child, in order to get into those classes, you have to have what's written on the backboard. And if you're caught cheating, are they, you know, it's a behavioral thing. Are they ousted from the class? That was one of the questions that I had. The other question.
Not according to what we have.
Okay. So that's one of the questions that I had too. And then one of the things that kind of concerned me that was stated was leave it to the discretion of the teacher. Well, what if that teacher doesn't like my kid because we went to school together and they didn't like me?
Honestly, that's part of where this came from, because there were situations being taken care of in classrooms differently.
Right.
And so we were trying to get more consistent.
No, and I like the consistency part, because that when that was stated, that was a concern. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, teachers, I love you all, but we have to have the consistency across the board.
But honestly, it would help. It would, right at this point, until this is brought any farther, what we would need, what would help us, is to have the behaviors that are already identified here, and our practice then would be, until it's brought back to the board, if there was something else brought back, it would be the 0.
Does this need to be rewritten a little bit so we understand it? And do we have 3 weeks? Can we leave it 3 weeks?
It's basically what the policy you have now, and you just switch the 50% to 0%.
Delete that, or what do you call it?
Just amend the 50 to 0.
Yeah, okay.
Because the behavior, what Lonnie's saying, he wants the behavior to stay.
Yeah, right, we just got to make sure it's said right.
Like my point about National Honor Society, that's what you could have, which makes no sense.
Well, in that case, I'll withdraw my motion to table it and per another motion stating that we'll keep the 0% and allow for the behavior consequences to remain.
I'll second that.
Can I ask a question? When we were discussing this before, I brought up on the permanent record, have you ever checked in on second offense or third offense?
We had a Wright County Conference Principals meeting last week, and out of the 14 that were there wasn't a one of them that had ever heard that you could legally do that, because those permanent records are sent off, and you don't send behavior consequences to a college. So if you put it on their transcript, it goes to a college, and you don't put any other behaviors on their transcript.
Termination.
So there wasn't a one of them that thought it was legal. I can check with Roger Aronson in our association, though, who's our legal. But there isn't a principal that has ever heard that that's illegal to do.
I don't think it is.
Okay. I think it's two separate entities. You've got your legal system, and you've got your educational system, and
because technically the transcript should be a record of their academic performance, and I know that you say, well, that is an academic. Well, it's a behavior.
Yeah. All right. We're talking in circles, because the cheating was a behavior too. We're kind of talking around in circles because the cheating was a behavior and all that. I don't know, maybe I'm more stricter, but well, I'll go along with what Dennis and Jerry came up with.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0.